Because of this footage, the police haven't been able to close the case for years. At 9:14 in the morning, Olivia Hayes was seen on a security camera entering the forest. She was seen entering. A few kilometers later, her footprints suddenly ended. There were no signs of a struggle, no sign of her turning back, nor were there any footprints belonging to another person. 3 days later, Olivia emerged alone from the other side of the forest. She didn't remember where she had been. When the detective asked her the last thing she remembered, she only said this: "With every step I took, the person behind me took a step at the exact same time." On June 6, 2020, a disappearance in the state of South Carolina became a national headline, dominating the country's agenda. A woman in her 30s, after leaving the gym in the morning, she was seen on security cameras walking toward the wooded area. Shortly after, her phone stopped transmitting a signal. Despite days of searching, no trace was found. The police announced that the case still remains unsolved. But what if there was another unknown aspect to what happened that day? Olivia Hayes was 35 years old, an experienced hiker. To spend weekends away from the crowds, she often preferred the hiking trails around Congaree National Park. She would choose these routes. On Saturday morning, just after 9:41, she parked her car. The security camera recorded her walking toward the forest with her backpack. She smiled and waved at the attendant. That person was the last to see her. Until the evening hours, when she didn't return home, her sister notified the police. The next morning, at the scene, Detective Ryan Carter and Park Ranger Mason Brooks arrived. While Ryan examined the area, Mason quietly looked into the forest. "It's not easy to get lost in this area," he said. Ryan raised his eyebrows. "Her phone might not have a signal, but people always leave some kind of trace." Mason nodded. "That's exactly the problem." Search teams followed Olivia's footprints until noon. They tracked Olivia's footprints. The prints continued regularly for about 2 kilometers. They kept going. Then, all of a sudden, they ended. There was no sign of her turning back, no sign of a struggle, nor any footprints belonging to another person. Ryan crouched down. The ground was soft. If someone had taken her from here, there would be traces left behind. Mason looked around. "I'm thinking the same thing," he said on the second day. Drones were launched. Thermal cameras didn't show anything at all. The dogs lost Olivia's scent exactly at the point where her footprints ended. Ryan was starting to get frustrated. "This goes against the laws of physics," he said. Mason smiled. "The forest can sometimes surprise you," he said. Ryan replied immediately. "It's not the forest, it's people who surprise you." That same evening, the security camera recordings were reviewed again. A young technician from the technical team ran into the room. "Detective, you need to see this," he said. Ryan approached the screen. In the first footage, Olivia was entering the forest at 9:14. A few minutes later, the second camera was activated. Ryan's expression changed. "This is impossible," he said. In the second footage, Olivia was walking again, but this camera was about 11 kilometers behind the first camera, and the timestamp on the footage showed only 40 minutes later. Ryan immediately asked, "Could the camera clocks be wrong?" The technician shook his head. "They all use a GPS time system," he said. Mason looked at the screen silently. "So she really was there," he said. The next morning, the three of them together went to the spot where the second camera was located. Just off the road, old concrete poles stood out. Mason stopped. "I remember this," he said. Ryan looked at him curiously. "Remember what? My dad used to tell me there was an old communications facility here. Police archives confirmed that in 1984 there was a small federal communications center located in this area. A small communications center existed. Official records show the facility closed 3 decades ago. However, in satellite images, a narrow concrete road could still be seen among the trees." Ryan and his team followed the road. After about 20 minutes, they reached a rusty metal door. The door was open and the inside was much cleaner than expected. On the table, there was a half-finished cup of coffee. A small green light on the electrical panel was still on. Ryan looked around in astonishment. "This place doesn't look like it's been closed for years." Just then, Mason called out from another room, "Ryan, come here." Mounted on the wall, one of the old security monitors was working. There was a view of a corridor on the screen. And in the footage, Olivia was walking. Her backpack was the same. Her clothes were the same. Her face was visible. Ryan looked at his watch. The timestamp on the monitor showed only 2 hours earlier. "This recording can't be old," Mason whispered. "Right before we got here." Ryan had the entire building searched. Not a single person was found. There were no vehicles, no computers, nor any other exit. Only a cup of hot coffee remained. The next day, the FBI technical team arrived. All the devices were dismantled. The monitor wasn't working. The power connection was completely cut off. Ryan closed the file angrily. Someone cleared this place out just minutes before we arrived. But there wasn't the slightest trace of how they got out. 3 days later, an unexpected tip came in. A camper at the northern entrance of the forest said he saw a woman walking alone. When the teams arrived at the area, Olivia was really there. She looked exhausted, but she didn't have a single scratch on her. Her phone was in her pocket. Her watch was working. Ryan sat down next to her by the ambulance. "Olivia, can you hear me?" The woman slowly nodded her head. "What happened to me?" Ryan took a deep breath. "You've been missing for 3 days. Olivia looked on in astonishment. 3 days? The doctors performed memory tests. Olivia could only remember entering the forest. Everything after that was completely blank. Ryan asked one last time, "What's the last thing you remember?" Olivia was silent for a long time. Then she lowered her eyes to the ground. "I was walking." Ryan waited and "I heard someone walking behind me." Ryan asked carefully, "Did you turn around and look?" Olivia shook her head from side to side. "No, why?" The woman took a deep breath. "Because every time I took a step, they took a step at the exact same time." The silence in the room lasted for a few seconds. Ryan didn't respond. The crime scene was searched once more. The old facility was completely empty. Even the table inside had been removed. Now in the room where the hot coffee had been, there was only dust. It was as if no one had ever been there. Months later, the case was officially closed. The result, the missing person was found alive. The cause of the memory loss could not be determined. No criminal element related to the incident could be found. Before Ryan filed the case into the archive, he reviewed the security camera footage one final time. Olivia was walking into the forest with heavy steps. As the footage was about to end, Ryan paused the video. In the farthest corner of the screen, among the trees, dressed in black, a faint human figure could be seen for a few frames. He zoomed in on the image. It still couldn't be made out clearly. He advanced one more frame. The figure had disappeared. The search teams had combed that area multiple times. No one had ever been found there. Ryan stared at the monitor for a few more seconds. Then he turned off the screen, and the case took its place among the unsolved files.